You feel it, don't you? That weight in your chest when you're surrounded by people, but utterly alone. That exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from being too awake, from seeing too clearly, from feeling too deeply. In a world that moves on the surface, you're not broken because you're weak. You're lonely because you're honest. And that honesty is destroying you. Kierkegaard understood this. He called it a sickness unto death. Not a physical illness, not sadness, but despair. The kind that sits in your bones. The kind you carry in silence, while smiling through conversations that mean nothing. Kierkegaard believed that most people never truly meet themselves. They live in what he called the crowd. They adopt opinions they never questioned. They wear masks they never chose. They become who everyone else expects them to be. And they call that peace. But you couldn't do that. Something inside you refused. Some strange gravity pulled you inward. You looked at your own life and asked questions no one else seemed to care about. Who am I, really? What does any of this mean? Why does everyone pretend? We're not all walking toward the same darkness. And the moment you asked those questions, you stepped outside the crowd. You became estranged, not by choice, but by awareness. Kierkegaard said that to become a self is to stand alone before the infinite, to face your freedom, your responsibility, your finitude, to look at the abyss of possibility and feel a terror of being the one who must choose. Most people never do this. They sleep through their lives, comfortable, distracted, safe. You woke up, and now you can't go back. The first wound is this. You see through the scripts. When people speak, you hear the rehearsed lines, the borrowed phrases, the safe platitudes. You watch them perform identities. They download it from the world around them. And you feel invisible, because no one is really there. No one is speaking from the place where they actually live. Kierkegaard called this aesthetic existence. A life lived on the surface, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, moving from distraction to distraction, never confronting the self, never asking the real questions. You tried to live like that once. You tried to just enjoy things, to not think so much, to be normal, but it felt like suffocation. Because when you're capable of depth, shallow water feels like drowning. You need conversations that matter, connections that go below the performance, moments where someone else is brave enough to be real, to admit they're afraid, to confess they don't know, to sit with you in the uncertainty without rushing toward answers or comfort or noise. But those people are rare. So rare it sometimes feels like you imagine them. And the loneliness of being awake in a sleeping world becomes unbearable. You walk into rooms full of laughter and feel like a ghost. You sit at tables where everyone is talking and realize you have nothing to say. Not because you're empty, but because what lives inside you cannot be translated into small talk. How do you explain to someone that you felt the weight of existence while brushing your teeth this morning? That you stood in the shower and suddenly understood your own mortality in a way that made your knees weak? You don't. You smile, you nod, you say you're fine. And the distance between what you feel and what you say becomes an ocean. The second wound is this. You carry too much consciousness. Kierkegaard spoke of anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo you feel when you realize that every moment is a choice and you are responsible for who you are becoming. Most people avoid this feeling. They let life happen to them. They follow the path. They accept the story they were given. They never paused long enough to feel the weight of their own existence. But you felt it. You feel it still. You lie awake at night, aware of yourself, being aware of yourself. A strange recursion. A mirror facing a mirror. And in that infinite reflection, you see all the versions of yourself you could have been. All the choices you didn't make. All the roads you didn't walk. And it's terrifying, because freedom isn't liberation. Freedom is the burden of endless possibility with no guarantee of meaning. You could have been anyone. You could still become anyone. But every choice closes 1,000 doors. Every step forward is also a loss. And you feel that loss. You mourn the lives you didn't live, the selves you didn't become. This is why deep souls are exhausted, because they carry the weight of being fully human in a world that encourages everyone to be less. Every decision becomes existential. Choosing what to do with your life isn't just about career or passion. It's about deciding who you are in the face of death. Every relationship becomes a confrontation with your capacity to love and be loved. Every failure becomes evidence of your finitude, and you can't turn it off. This awareness, this consciousness that observes everything, including itself. People tell you to stop overthinking, to just be present, to let go, but they don't understand. This isn't a choice. This is who you are. Your mind doesn't rest because your soul refuses to sleep through life. And so you carry it, this exhausting gift, this terrible awareness, alone. The third wound is this: you cannot lie to yourself. Kierkegaard believed that most despair is unconscious. People live in quiet self-deception. They tell themselves stories to avoid the truth. They numb themselves. They hide behind roles and routines and the opinions of others. But you can't do that anymore. Something in you won't allow it. When you try to pretend, your body revolts. When you smile through something false, you feel sick. When you betray yourself to fit in, to be liked, to keep the peace, a part of you dies. And you've died too many times already. So you stopped pretending. You started saying no. You started pulling away from people and places and versions of yourself that weren't true. You chose honesty over comfort, solitude over compromise. And it broke you, because the cost of integrity is isolation. The cost of being yourself is that most people won't understand you. They'll think you're difficult, cold, too serious, too sensitive, too much. And maybe you are too much, but you'd rather be too much than nothing at all. Kierkegaard said that purity of heart is to will one thing, to live with a singular, unwavering commitment to truth, to refuse the fragmentation that comes from trying to please everyone. Believe everything. Become whoever the moment demands. You've been trying to live that way, to be whole, to be honest, to be true. And it's costing you everything. Your relationships fracture because you won't play the game. Your career stalls because you can't pretend to care about things that don't matter. Your days feel longer because you refuse to fill them with distractions that only delay the inevitable confrontation with yourself. You watch other people live seemingly easy lives. They go through the motions. They follow the script. They seem content. And you wonder if you're doing it wrong, if maybe you should try harder to be like them, to want what they want, to find satisfaction in what satisfies them. But every time you try, something in you screams. A voice that sounds like truth, a feeling that tastes like betrayal. And you know you can't. You simply can't. The fourth wound is this: you love too deeply in a world that loves carefully. Kierkegaard wrote about love as a leap, a risk, a movement toward another person that requires you to abandon certainty, to make yourself vulnerable, to give without guarantee of return. Most people protect themselves. They love conditionally. They keep an exit strategy. They give only as much as they're comfortable losing. But you never learned how to love that way. When you love, you dissolve. You give everything. You let someone into the deepest chambers of your being, the places you've never shown anyone, the parts of yourself you're still learning to accept. And it terrifies you, because you know what happens when you love like this. You get hurt, you get abandoned, you get misunderstood. People aren't ready for the intensity you bring. They wanted connection, but not this much. They wanted intimacy, but not the kind that asks them to be equally vulnerable, equally honest, equally brave. So they pull back. They create distance. They tell you it's too much too fast, that you're overwhelming, that they need space, and you're left holding all this love with nowhere to put it. There was a time not long ago when you thought you'd found someone who understood, someone who looked at you and saw you, not the version you perform, not the surface, but the depths, the darkness, the questions, the wounds. You let them in. You showed them the parts of yourself you've learned to hide, the anxiety, the overthinking, the strange sadness that visits you for no reason, the way you disappear into yourself sometimes and can't explain where you've gone. And for a moment, it felt like relief, like maybe you weren't as alone as you thought. But then they started trying to fix you, or they got tired, or they realized that being close to someone who feels this much is exhausting, that loving a deep soul means sitting with things that have no resolution, holding space for pain that doesn't go away. And they left, or they stayed, but became distant. A body next to you, but not really there. And you understood. You don't blame them, because you know what it's like to be around you. You know the heaviness, the intensity, the way you turn every conversation into something deeper than it needed to be. But it still broke you, because you thought maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. And now you're back where you always end up, alone with yourself, with your thoughts, with the weight of a consciousness that never sleeps. The fifth wound is this. You see the meaninglessness and can't unsee it. Kierkegaard understood that once you truly confront the absurdity of existence, you can't go back to innocence. You can't return to the comfort of unquestioned beliefs and inherited meanings. You've seen it, the arbitrary nature of everything, the social constructs we pretend are natural, the stories we tell ourselves to avoid the void, the way we create meaning out of nothing, because the alternative is unbearable. And once you see it, everything becomes both lighter and heavier. Lighter because nothing really matters in the cosmic sense. Your failures aren't as devastating. Your embarrassments aren't as significant. Your pain isn't as permanent. Heavier because if nothing matters, then everything you do is your responsibility. You can't blame God or fate or the universe. You can't say things happen for a reason. You have to create your own meaning in a meaningless world. And that burden is crushing. You watch people find comfort in beliefs you can't hold anymore. Religious certainty, political ideologies, self-help promises, the fantasy that everything will work out if you just try hard enough. And you envy them sometimes, their ability to believe, their capacity for hope, their faith in progress and purpose and cosmic justice. But you can't join them because you've been to the edge and looked over And what you saw there changed you forever. This doesn't make you nihilistic. It makes you honest. And that honesty is a wound that never fully heals. Kierkegaard wrote about the knight of faith, a figure who lives in the world, but not of it. Someone who has passed through despair and come out the other side. Not by escaping their humanity, but by embracing it fully. The knight of faith doesn't avoid suffering. They accept it. They don't demand that life makes sense. They choose to love it anyway. They carry their finitude, their freedom, their loneliness, and they find a strange peace within it. Not happiness, not certainty, but something deeper, a quiet yes to existence, even in its terror. This is the only resolution Kierkegaard offers. And it's not easy. It's not a technique. It's not a mindset you adopt and suddenly feel better. It's a lifetime of returning to yourself, of refusing the temptation to hide, of standing in your own truth, even when it isolates you, even when it hurts. The knight of faith knows they are alone. They know life offers no guarantees. They know meaning is something they must create, not discover. And still, they choose to live, to love, to believe in something beyond proof. This is the paradox, the freedom, the impossible possibility. You are being invited into this. Not to fix yourself, not to become less sensitive, or less deep, or less broken, but to accept yourself fully, to stop fighting your nature, to recognize that your loneliness is not a flaw, but a consequence of your refusal to live on the surface. You are lonely because you're awake. You are broken because you refuse to numb yourself. You are exhausted because you're carrying the full weight of being human. And none of that makes you weak. It makes you real. The world will not understand you. Most people will not meet you where you are. You will spend much of your life feeling like a stranger in your own skin, in your own culture, in your own time. But there is something sacred in that strangeness, something holy in your refusal to be anything less than yourself. Kierkegaard believed that the self is not something you have, it's something you become, a task, a responsibility, a relationship with the infinite within you. You are becoming, slowly, painfully, honestly. And maybe that's enough. Maybe your loneliness is not a problem to solve, but a depth to honor. Maybe your brokenness is not weakness, but the price of staying whole. Maybe your exhaustion is not burnout, but the natural consequence of refusing to sleep through your one precious life. You will not find easy answers. You will not discover a method that makes this hurt less. But you might find something more valuable. You might find yourself, not the self the world wanted you to be, not the self you thought you should be, but the self you actually are when you stop performing, stop pretending, stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And in that discovery, there is a quiet kind of freedom. The sun sets differently when you've learned to be alone. Not lonely, not isolated, but alone in the way Kierkegaard meant it. Standing before yourself, before your freedom, before the quiet terror and beauty of your own existence. And in that solitude, you find something unexpected. Not happiness, not answers, but a strange kind of peace. The peace of no longer running, of no longer pretending, of finally, quietly, being who you are. Even if no one is watching, even if no one understands, you are here, you are awake, you are alive. And that, in the end, is the only truth that matters. The loneliness doesn't disappear. The brokenness doesn't heal completely. But you learn to carry it differently. not as a burden you wish you could put down, but as evidence of your depth, your honesty, your refusal to betray yourself for comfort. You are a deep soul in a shallow world. And that makes you lonely, and that makes you broken. But it also makes you beautifully, devastatingly, impossibly real.